So we are living through a crisis most people haven't really noticed yet. Hello? And it's not a crisis of time or productivity or even attention, but something a little bit stranger. I think we're going through a crisis of self-intimacy. We've become people who can read thousands of opinions a day but can't sit with a single one of our own. Amidst seas, oceans of online arguments, culture wars, bots, misinformation and AI-generated algorithms, the quiet, private relationship we once had with ourselves is slowly but surely disappearing, if not completely gone. So welcome to this cosy corner of my living room and, most importantly, my favourite reading nook. And also Atticus has joined me for this video. This is a section of my home that I have consciously decided to make a tech-free zone. I'm not allowed my phone or my laptop in this realm. All I'm allowed to do is sit here and look out at the sea that's right in front of me, and usually with a book on my lap. Or I journal here as well. Now, I've been journaling a lot more recently, and primarily because it came to my attention that I have completely lost all sense of self. I have absolutely no idea who I am anymore, and I couldn't identify anything about myself. I couldn't identify my motives or my passions or my values or even describe my personality. You know, recently I've been asked about my hobbies and my interests, and I basically had none. And when asked about how I was feeling or what I was thinking about, I was totally stumped. You know, I didn't have the vocabulary to describe how I felt, nor could I really identify how I felt, like, you know, whether it was positive or negative. For a long time, I've been feeling like completely abstract from the world around me, like I'm just an observer and not an actual participant in even my own past, present and future. I honestly haven't been able to describe myself anymore. You know, I have no passions and no direction, and I don't know how I was supposed to fathom such ideas. Like, how do you come to those conclusions? Who I am, I seem to have lost sight of a long time ago. It's been basically years since I haven't evaluated my selfhood in terms of anything about productivity or work or output or social media analytics, branding, my weight or physical appearance. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you then. I've basically become a product that's measurable by statistics only, and a sort of extension of the internet and technological devices. You know, I reply to messages and emails, I scan information, I input and output faster than lightning, and days basically blend together until years have blended together, and I've just become a shadow of my former self. And even now my dog has abandoned me. What am I to do? Now, obviously, there are many reasons why people lose their sense of identity. You know, more often than not, it vanishes through things like trauma or major life changes, like career changes or accidents or losses. But I think the erasure identity and selfhood is becoming a more insidious thing that's happening in a much more subtle way, and it's completely almost unnoticeable. Every day we find our selfhood being chipped away at, and before we realise it, we become completely empty vessels, unsure of what happened or how we ended up like this. You know, how did we become people who can know everything about the world and almost nothing about ourselves? And what has made it so difficult for us to have an intimate relationship with ourselves? Well, before we start to answer those questions, I'd like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, Skims, whose cosy pyjamas I am currently donning. Yes, I am snug in this corner of the room in my new Skims wear. I haven't had new pyjamas since a certain someone was a puppy and chewed through all of them. So all my pyjama sets basically have massive holes in the sleeves or the knees, and it's just something you don't treat yourself to replace. You know, you stitch them up and they come undone, and you kind of just like live with it. So when I was offered a brand new pyjama set from Skims, I was ecstatic because these are glorious. I honestly forgot how nice it was to have a new set of pyjamas to wear, and I of course chose this red flannel because it's very reminiscent of what I think is like Calgary tartan, which I love all tartan. I live in Scotland, and it's also really perfect for Christmas. I really appreciate a comfy fashionable, stylish kind of pyjama set. As you can see, I got like a small, but it's a little ever so slightly bigger, which makes you just feel like you're wearing a size a little bit bigger than you, so it feels like it's more engulfing. And it has pockets. The trousers do have pockets, which I'm very appreciative of. I think I'm going to look adorable Christmas morning, basically, with my partner and I opening presents. So if you are looking for perfect gifts for everyone on your list, the Skims holiday shop is now open at skims.com. I will leave the links in the description box down below, and after you place your order, please be sure to let them know that I sent you. You know, you could select YouTube from the survey and be sure to select Lady of the Library, my channel, in the drop down menu that follows. Thank you, Skims, for sponsoring today's video. I'm very cozy. I feel the coziest I have ever been filming a video. Okay, so here's my theory. I believe many of us may find that we are losing our sense of self and our self-intimacy through our relationships with technology and the internet. You know, it's no secret that screen time is causing brains to perform differently. The most obvious change occurs in cognitive processing. Devices unconsciously retrain our brains to perform a different kind of thinking, you know, one that's very superficial and shallow. We tend to skim sources, rapidly jump from one source to the next, and this sort of unfocused, distracted way of consuming information does not really allow for moments of self-reflective learning, such as reading a book does. And it's through this digital media consumption that one becomes a sort of parrot. We don't self-reflect and digest, and when we don't self-reflect and digest the information that we are consuming, we tend to resort to regurgitating other people's ideas, positions, and even research rather than doing our own, which is just the start of disassociating from ourselves and becoming less of ourselves and more something else. I wouldn't say somebody else, because what are we really becoming? And then obviously we have social media, which is a whole whirlpool of inauthenticity. The constructed self, whether that's through filters or photo editing, or merely only posting one's highlights or exaggerating how productive and successful one is, etc. It creates a blur between who you are and how you are perceived, and suddenly your own reflection looks rather obscure and unfamiliar. And that can lead down a whole wormhole. See the surge in plastic surgeries that are happening and people all looking the same. But then on top of that, when one becomes reliant on external validation, it prevents one from developing a healthy ability to validate oneself, leading to increases in anxiety, paranoia, and social phobias. So over time, with an increased dependency on the internet and consuming other people's ideas online, we begin to lack mentation, you know, the ability to know our own thoughts, our own feelings, and articulate who we are and why we are the way we are. Then we have the obvious final boss of this whole disaster, which is AI. People aren't just using AI to do their work for them, but they're using AI as therapists, writing text messages to friends, or asking it to come up with what to say to their partner after having a fight with them, or writing their wedding vows. This lack of willingness for people to engage with their own brains, their own work, their own feelings, and their own relationships is, quite frankly, horrifying. Nearly 200 million people are using ChatGPT a day, and early research is proving that it is only harming people intellectually and cognitively. Earlier this year, MIT Media Lab conducted a study, and this study divided 54 subjects who were between the ages of 18 and 39 years old into 3 groups, and they asked them to write several SAT essays. Now, one group used OpenAI's ChatGPT, the other was allowed to use Google's search engine, and the third group couldn't use anything at all. Now, researchers used an EEG to record the writer's brain activity across 32 regions, and they found that of the 3 groups, ChatGPT users had the lowest brain engagement and consistently underperformed at neural, linguistic, and behavioural levels. And over the course of several months, ChatGPT users got lazier with each subsequent essay, often resorting to copy and paste by the end of the study. I saw this rather funny post on Blue Sky a week or so ago in which a lecturer was reporting what her husband said to his students at university. When his students were complaining that they hadn't been assigned the classes that they wanted to take, he asked which of them used ChatGPT, and as they all raised their hands, he told them quite bluntly, well, it doesn't matter that you didn't get the classes you wanted because you're not going to try and learn anything anyway. Now, I think it's obvious to say that ChatGPT doesn't educate people, and it doesn't make them more capable or confident. It makes people actually doubt their own abilities, and it stops them from using and strengthening their own skills. And it does this for the exact same reason social media is built with addictive characteristics. The end goal of ChatGPT is to make people dependent on it, use it more, and they subsequently earn more money. Now, this loss of basic skills is not only devastating for the individual and their relationships, but also it can have devastating consequences for society as a whole. Another study earlier this year looked at doctors' use of AI. We all know that artificial intelligence is beginning to help doctors screen patients for several routine diseases, which is awesome, but their reliance on it may be causing professional harm. The study, which looked at gastroenterologists in Poland, found that doctors who relied heavily on AI appeared to be about 20% worse at spotting polyps and other abnormalities during colonoscopies on their own. And that's horrifying, especially when you consider another AMA study at the beginning of 2025 revealed that 2 in 3 physicians are using health AI for everything from documentation to billing codes, medical charts, visit notes, creation of discharge instructions, care plans and progress notes, translation services and assistive diagnosis. Well, it's sort of safe to say that more and more innocent people are not getting treated by medical professionals, but instead by AI, and that can potentially lead to fatal errors. The more dominant the role of internet and technology plays in our lives, the less it serves as a tool and the more it becomes a curator determining how we should be. What we should be talking and thinking about, how we should look, what we should buy, how we should interact with others, what people we should and should not like, how we should feel, and what we should change about ourselves to fit in. In order to survive online, you sort of had to cut yourself down to fit into the narrowest of spaces. And we already live in a society that does that anyway, but the algorithms are far more ruthless in what it deems worthy. And the internet follows you offline, and you can feel compelled to watch, buy, or listen to, or talk about whatever is trending online just to be able to broach a conversation with a colleague, because making friends is getting harder as you get older. It doesn't matter what you like anymore. And it's far too dangerous to stop to question if you truly like this topic of discussion or the trend into which you've invested, because heaven forbid you fall behind or out of the loop and you're completely isolated from the discussion and basically everyone around you. And as such, you end up scrolling online for hours, watching mindless videos about topics that you don't care about. But it's popular and everyone else is talking about it, so perhaps you should be like everyone else and watch it, because who else are you going to be otherwise? And before you know it, you have no motivation or passion or dreams because you try to make yourself as shapeless and streamlined as possible to avoid all the friction, to blend in and not draw too much attention to yourself. And then you're left wondering, who the hell am I? And what am I doing here? Now, self-intimacy is sitting with yourself to know more about who you are, what you're interested in when it's not suggested to you by an algorithm, how you feel about yourself when you're not spending hours online comparing yourself to others, how you'd work when you have no idea what other people's productivity routines are, what you'd read if you didn't know what was trending or popular on TikTok, how you talk to yourself if you didn't read the nasty comments, what you'd care about if you had no idea what other people cared about, and what you'd put energy into if you weren't giving it all to your phone and the things that it shows you. For me, this has definitely been a year of reflection and really untangling the knot that I have twisted myself into in order to just survive, perhaps, maybe. I know my life was much better when I lived it a different way. A decade ago, and I think my reliance on how to live has definitely come down to using the internet far too much. I Google a lot all the time. I Google for help. I Google for examples. I Google for advice, like all the time. And obviously this is my job, and I'm looking at what's trending, what's not. And I end up reading things I'm not particularly interested in and following ideas I'm not particularly invested in, and feeling more like I said in past videos, that I don't really fit into this space. And I don't think I'm alone. I don't think it's just a creator's problem. I think a lot of people feel that way. And if you needed a sign to get offline for a while, this is your sign. And thank you for using my videos to watch whilst you were on it. It's more really heavily curating how I employ the internet and using it only as a tool and not as something that I turn to all of the time, every day, every few minutes, several times an hour, to look up something, figure things out on my own, really engage my brain, go back to old school work, go back to handwriting all of my notes, go back to handwriting all of my scripts, honestly, and getting my brain off a screen, because I feel like I've become more and more alien to myself and less human. Thank God I haven't gone down the whole AI route. I see, I read articles all about how people are falling down and talking to ChatGPT and stuff like that. And I was like, I as someone who uses Google a lot, and feels heavily reliant on looking up answers, I can totally see how something like ChatGPT would really, connect itself with someone, and that's horrifying. And I think we are losing ourselves. I think a lot of focus is always on, we're not really connecting with one another, and that's true. That's a horrifying fact that humans are becoming more disconnected from one another. But I think part of the reason they are becoming disconnected from one another is that they don't even have a relationship with themselves in the first place. So no wonder another human being feels completely alien when we've lost ourselves to not knowing how we should be offline, how we should exist independently in terms of who we are, what we're really interested in, what we truly care about, that we're not being told to care about and what we're being told to be interested in, and to try and fit in because everyone else is talking about it. And yes, that's what I've been basically journaling about. So sorry, it's not really a bookish video. I just wanted to get this out there somewhere. But thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you, as always, to my wonderful Patreons. Where am I going to put you? I don't know which side fits better. One of these sides. And in particular to my librarians, my top tier Patreons. We have Silver Changeling, Lacey Grindstaff, Joshua Herodier, Gil the Gilded Dragon, Fox Goblin 666, Lady of the Labyrinth, Ellen, Eric Taylor, Yvonne and Yvonne, Jenny Edivane, Marina, Wee Lauren, Nicholas Reed and Andy Bazil. Thank you ever so much for watching and supporting me over on Patreon, and I will see you soon for another video. And remember, books save lives, so keep reading.